All right, so the folks that are sitting in the chairs back there, if you are a voter in the district, it would be better if you were on this side that's just for counting votes. Sorry about that, but I've asked Sean and Gwen to do the same. So that area is for non-voters. All right, welcome everyone to the 2022 Tilton Northfield Fire District Annual Meeting. For the record, it is 7:05 p.m. on March 14th, 2022. And we are at the Winnisquam Regional High School in Tilton, New Hampshire, for the purpose of conducting the Fire District Annual Meeting. My name is Ken Finnemore. I'm the moderator for the Tilton Northfield Fire District, Fire and EMS. I'd like to introduce Fire Chief Mike Seatar and ask him to lead in the salute to the flag of the United States of America. Up back.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. All right, this annual meeting is a time to conduct the business of the district. It's also a time to celebrate the efforts of our fire department, some of whom are here tonight. This is a very professional group. I'd like to think I'm lucky that I haven't had to contact them too many times over the 58 years I've lived in this district, but when I have had to, they showed up and they were and are the best. All right, your fire commissioners are the chairman, Paul Osier. Eric Pyra is the chair. Paul Osier is one of our commissioners, as is John Silly. Treasurer for the fire district is Tim Pearson. Clerk for the fire district is Camden Steady. Fire district budget committee includes Jason Wright from Tilton, Jane Alden from Tilton, Catherine Dawson from Tilton, Kevin Waldron from Northfield, Charles Broughton from Northfield, Scott Lewandowski from Northfield, and the commissioner's rep on that committee is Eric. Yes, Eric Pyra. Thanks to the budget committee again for their service this year to the fire district. Moderator's handbook published by the Local Government Center is in large part my reference for handling the meeting. I have two assistant moderators to help me out this evening. That's Tim Sattler from Tilton and Paul Blaisdell from Northfield. Process, please, if you can, put your cell phones on silent mode. As the articles are introduced, I'll ask for a motion in a second. Once we record that, I'll recognize someone to speak to the article so we can get a brief explanation before we open for further testimony. All testimony and questions must be directed to the moderator. Please present your testimony with courtesy and respect to the entire assembly. If it gets personal, naming names, poorly veiled references to people by title, these are all issues that are covered under RSA 40:8, which I will paraphrase. In the event of disorderly behavior, there will be a warning issued by the moderator, and if necessary, we'll ask Officer Norman there to escort you from the premises. I'd like to think that will happen. Please understand, too, that when you speak, if you are asking a question, you're providing testimony. Generally speaking, someone tries to answer the questions, but no one is obligated to respond. And, you know, sometimes nobody knows the answer, or whatever, but within reasonable level of decorum, you can provide whatever testimony you like, but no one has to respond to others' testimony. It is a violation of state law for anyone to speak at the meeting without being recognized by the moderator. For example, when somebody else has the floor, this is RSA 40:7. Please try to remember that the right to express ourselves and to vote relies on conducting government in a civil manner. I'm going to ask you to limit your testimony to around 3 minutes. We do have a fairly full warrant with 17 articles tonight. I'm not suggesting we won't take whatever time it takes, but ideally we'll try to keep things moving. As moderator, I will try to use my best judgment, and if it is obvious that there's a point to what you're saying, we'll be courteous, but if things are dragging out, we may ask you to make your point and finish up. You have to use the microphones, because otherwise we don't get it recorded, and that is part of the public record for the meeting. If you have a follow-up question, please request such from the moderator and direct it through the moderator before proceeding. It's not appropriate to have a conversation back and forth on the floor. Part of holding an annual district meeting is creating the public record by keeping the minutes and electronically recording the meeting. And that's harder to do if there's not a clear distinction between who's talking. Sometimes it's really difficult to hear someone's name. We need to have your name to record that as part of the minutes if you're giving testimony. And sometimes you can't hear it even after you've been asked to repeat it. So I may ask, no offense at all, but sometimes I just don't get it straight. And we may ask one of our assistant moderators to stop by and get your name so we can get it clear to the record. It is my intent, to the extent possible, to hear from those who have yet to speak on an issue before we hear again from those who have already spoken. To me, that's very important. Motions to call the question must be made by a voter who has been recognized by the moderator to speak. I will not respond to a motion shouted from the assembly. Moderator will not accept motions to call a question or table an article if it follows testimony on the part of the person making the motion. In other words, you can't have your say and then cut everybody else off. In the judgment of the moderator, there hasn't been sufficient debate on a particular issue. I'll make a ruling to not accept the motion to call a question. Motions to call a question are not debatable and must be approved by 2/3 majority. If I have any doubts, we'll count the votes. Now, that said, any decision by the moderator can be challenged by any member of the assembly, and a vote of the assembly, you can overturn a ruling by the moderator by a simple majority. So, for example, if I make a ruling that I'm not going to accept a motion to call the vote, you can challenge that, and if the assembly agrees with you on the vote, then overturn, and we go directly to calling the question. So I'm making a ruling when I do that, and if you don't agree, you can challenge it, and it can be overturned by the assembly. Motions to restrict reconsideration of a vote under RSA 40:10, more commonly referred to as protecting your vote. I will accept that reference with the intention to restrict reconsideration under 40:10. I prefer that such a motion be made prior to moving on to the next article, but that's not necessary. It can come at any time. There is a designated space. I think you mentioned that for non-voters. If you're not registered to vote with a voting card, please do not participate in the meeting in any way unless specifically recognized by the moderator, especially during times of a ballot or secret vote. I wouldn't say it's too big a deal tonight. We don't have that big of an assembly. Sometimes when you go to a ballot vote and you have fewer people, things can get, people that aren't registered voters start milling around. Try to avoid that. I don't know what we have for members of the media here tonight, but welcome. We understand you have a very important job to do. In respective times that you need to clarify a name or something, or would like to take a picture, just please avoid the appearance of participating in the meeting. Generally speaking, we'll try to vote initially with a voice vote. If we have a call for a show of hands or a secret ballot, I've appointed assistants moderator to help with that. To accommodate, we don't have that many people here, but I'm just going to split side to side. If we have a ballot vote, we don't really need to split up the assembly. There's not that many people here. Motions to amend an article must be made by a registered voter in the district. Must be in writing, must be signed by the voter making the motion. The motion must also be very clear as to how the article will be amended. It can't can't tell you how to write your amendment, but sometimes the best thing is just to rewrite the entire article. If in my opinion there's any possibility whatsoever that amendment can be alternatively interpreted, I will not accept the motion. That doesn't mean that we won't get you to where you want to go, but it could take more time. So being a little more thoughtful up front can help. Any questions? All right. Each article on the warrant is read in its entirety before being considered. Each article, as amended, is read by the moderator before a vote. If there's been limited discussion, I may ask if it's okay if I don't read the entire article again. And if that's so, that I had to save us a little bit of time. And then reading the warrant at the start of the meeting is something that's become less of an expectation. But if anyone here would like me to read the entire warrant before we start, I'd be happy to do it. I should say happy. Seeing none, I will proceed with Article 1. Sir. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. So I'd like to introduce Mike again. Mike Sitar, the chief. He's going to give a brief presentation prior to jumping in with Article 1.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So, as become accustomed, I usually give a little report of what has happened last year before we move on to the town district meeting this year. So the first thing we talk about is the fund balances, and they're all listed up there. They've been audited, and the audit is final, and the only thing we're waiting for is the final report on the audit, but the numbers shouldn't be moving from where it is. The unassigned fund balance, as we ended last year, was $626,059, and you can see where we had subtractions from that to where we got to $310,000. Then the audited assigned balance for this year is $315,527, and then you can see to the left of that we have some warrant articles that are going to reduce that amount if they're approved in the amount of $44,000 and change, leaving at the end $271,159 in the unassigned fund balance. This year we received our new engine 2, we call it 21 engine 2, and it is in service. It actually went in service on Christmas Day. In 2021, we responded to 2,014 emergency incidents. During the year, the total mutual aid that we received were 91. That's both the ambulance and engines. And the total mutual aid given was 150. This is a pie chart that shows the types of incidents that we go to. It's broken down into basically 9 different types. And then you can see the biggest pie indicator is for medical emergencies and motor vehicle accidents. The red area near the top is for fire calls. The next pie chart shows incident locations. And you can see that the center or the village district area receives the most incidents at 39%. And then the area near exit 20, that part of the fire district, receives 36% of our calls. And then the area towards the west in West Main Street and Oak Hill Road, that part of the fire district makes up 17% of the calls, and then mutual aid calls are 8%. So it actually doesn't look too big when you're on this thing, but when I made this map, this is an indicator of the districts and how they're broken down, whereas the yellow area is the village district, the green area is the other district that I talked about, east, and then the blue area, the light blue area, is the west part of the fire district. Here is another pie chart that shows the incidents in the district by town. You can see that the town of Tilton has 62% of the incidents, and the town of Northfield at 36%. 38%, excuse me. Next pie chart shows incidents by day. And you can see that they're fairly evenly broken up, so we don't really have one day busier than the other. They're all pretty much equally busy. The next is a bar graph that shows incidents and simultaneous incidents by hour. So it's broken up from 12 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. The taller bars are the total incidents, and the red bars show that when we have 2 or more incidents going at the same time. The average arrival on scene time for the first incident is 6 minutes and 20 seconds. For the second incident or simultaneous incident is 7 minutes 48 seconds. 48% of all our incidents in 2021 were simultaneous incidents. And here's another pie chart that shows EMS incidents by age. And you can see that the older you get, the more likely you will be needing our services. Finally, this is the first year that we implemented the safer employees into the fire department. And I can tell you what the effects of that have been. First, it added 1 firefighter to each shift. We have 4 shifts, so we added 4 firefighters in total. So each shift now is comprised of a captain, a firefighter paramedic, a firefighter advanced EMT, and a firefighter basic EMT. The cost of the safer employees, if not grant funded, would have been 36 cents on the $1,000 per $1,000 on the tax rate. The next slide shows how many incidents we had last year, which is 2010, and then, excuse me, in 2020 we had 2010, in 2021 we had 2014. So basically we had the same amount of incidents. This is our response time for the second calls. So before we had the safer employees, our average response time on that second call was 14 minutes and 10 seconds. With this additional employees, that response time was nearly cut in half and is now 7 minutes and change. Ambulance transports. In 2020, we had 844 ambulance transports. That's taking people to the hospital. In 2021, that number went up to 929. And mind you, we had the same amount of runs. So how we were able to transport more people is that we used less mutual aid because we had the people to do it ourselves. And the other thing is we were able to provide more mutual aid to other communities because we had the personnel that was able to do so. The effect of that is our ambulance revenue went up. In 2020, we had $437,000 in revenue for ambulance income. And in 2021, that number went up to $523,000. Finally, the last slide shows trends. And you can see I put bar graphs in for every other year. And what it shows is the bar is the revenue, the solid red bar. The gray solid line is how many transports we had. and then the dashed lines, the dotted lines, red and gold, I guess we call them, are the trends, the predicted trends going on forward. So that wraps that up. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Mike. Alrighty, moving on to Article 1. Choose fire commissioner to choose a fire commissioner for the ensuing 3 years. Actual voting to be by official ballot on Tuesday, March 8, 2022 at the annual town voting sessions, Tilton and Northfield at their respective polling places and times. John Silly won that race by a considerable margin. That's what happens when you run in a vote. Article 2, to choose a clerk for the ensuing 2 years after voting to be by official ballot on Tuesday, March 8, 2022 at the annual town voting sessions in Tilton and Northfield at their respective polling places and times. Nobody ran in this particular case, so Kevin Waldman had the most write-in votes with 3. And we'll discuss that further with him, but we may see a vacancy in that position. Article 3, to choose a moderator for the ensuing 2 years, actual voting to be by official ballot on Tuesday, March 8, 2022 at the annual town voting sessions in Tilton and Northfield at their respective polling places and times. There has been a request for a recount of ballots, and that is scheduled for next Monday, March 21st, 6 p.m. at the Tilton Police Department. Article 4, to accept the results, accept the reports of the treasurer and the fire commissioner and pass any voting related thereto. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Pat?
I'd like to make a motion to reorder Article 13 before Article 5.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Deb Tessie? Okay, would you like to speak to your motion?
I just feel it's important enough that it's spoken to now rather than we have people that are tired at the end and tend to leave. I think it's very important for all our voices to be heard.
Okay, thanks. So the motion is to consider Article 13 prior to Article 5. Discussion on that motion. Hearing none. Those in favor of the motion, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare it. And so we will consider Article 13 after we finish with Article 4, which is on the floor. Discussion on Article 4. Seeing none. Those in favor of Article 4 is read, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. So declared. Article 4 passes. Article 13. To see if the district will vote to authorize the commissioners to enter into a 5-year agreement beginning January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2026 in the amount of $500,000 for the purpose of providing pressurized hydrant services necessary for fire suppression and raise and appropriate the annual cost of $100,000 for this year. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is not recommended by the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second. Thank you, Jerry. All right. Someone care to speak to the article? Yes. One second. John, please.
All right, so this article was placed in here because, as you remember last year, the article was voted down by 1 vote. So last year we did not have funds available for a contract with the Tilton Northfield Water District. It was voted down, and in the contract that was signed on March 8th, it said that if it was voted down at a public meeting, it was null and void. at that time. So we did not have any funds for it last year. There have been discussions, minimal throughout the year this time. The two district parties met once in person to try and come up with an agreement for this year. There was not one. The commissioners decided rather than going to another year with zero funds, that at least having some funds there, if an agreement could be made, then that's why that amount is there. It is an amount less than what came up, but with the discussion, there was a great divide between the amounts.
Thank you, John. Moderator would like to recognize Pat Clark, please. Stand up to yourself, man.
I'd like to make an amendment to this article, if I could. And do we have a copy for you?
You can read it first, please.
Oh, you don't read it?
Oh, I can. Sure.
You probably read it.
Well, I went to one small. Okay, we have a proposed amendment. It reads as follows. Proposed changing warrant article 13 to read as follows: to see if the district will vote to authorize the commissioners to enter into a 3-year agreement beginning January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2024 in the amount of $425,377.76 for the purpose of providing pressurized hydrant services necessary for fire suppression and raise and appropriate the annual costs of $136,269.14 for 2022, $141,719.91 for 2023, and $147,388.71 for 2024. Would you like to speak to? Oh, first, sorry. So he has made the motion for an amendment. Is there a second on the motion? Sanderson, please. Okay. Pat, please.
I'd like to speak to this if I could. I'm sorry that I didn't make last year's meeting. I regret that I did not. I guess it was one vote difference. So I'm hoping that we can pay our fair share for hydrants this year. I talked to John Chase, who has a warrant article that was read. It was written by the lawyer, and I agreed to get up and read it in front of everybody. What this does is it comes in below what the rate study price is. And there's somebody that spoke to me about the rate study earlier, and he'll get up and speak to it. But they have a rate study. The former original Article 13 was not agreed to by both the water commissioners and the fire commissioners. So this one is based on the rate study, less instead of $513.48 a hydrant, it's $330.75 a hydrant. So you save, actually, based on the rate study, you save another $52,000 this coming year. And actually it's per quarter for $211,375 for the year. And so forth throughout the following 2 years after that. So that's the story, and I hope we pay our bills. It is due to come up in court, I believe, in October. I think that's when the court is going to be, Judge O'Neill will be listening, presiding over it this coming October. So that's it. Are there any questions?
Questions that come through the moderator. Thanks. You all set? You good, Pat?
All right.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pat. So, as we consider testimony here, let's try to focus on just the amendment to the extent that we can. I know this conversation is probably going to go into other territory, but if we could try to focus on the proposed amendment for testimony, that would be good. Thanks, Joyce.
You can roll this out of order at any time, but I'm just curious to know why, I'd like to hear from the budget committee, why they did not recommend it this year.
Thank you, Joyce. Somebody from Jason, please.
Hi, Jason Wright, Tilton. This is one of the few things that, probably the only thing the budget committee did not recommend, and it's probably the only thing the whole budget committee agreed upon. We had a lot of split votes up and down these warrant articles. We just took the perspective that Commissioner Silly shared. There was no meeting of the minds, there was no contract, there was no draft contract, there was a number picked out of thin air, probably in good faith, but we didn't have any paperwork in front of us that said anything that the value of these hydrants was at that number, and it just felt like it was not even a fair consideration to have a vote on something that was not mutually agreed upon by the water district and the fire district. We just had nothing to go on.
Thanks very much, Jason. Paul?
Always out from Northfield. Couple questions. The first one is the discussion of the amendment was we should be paying our fair share, and I'm just really trying to find out what is our fair share. What is the value of a hydrant? The water district has placed a value on the hydrant. The fire department has in the past, or the district, excuse me, in the past has acquiesced to the value that the water district's placed on the hydrant. Nobody can tell me what the value of a hydrant is. So, with respect to the rate study, this is the Tilton Northfield Water District 2020 Water Rate Study Report. And in this report, basically, the water district says that there are 69 hydrants which are chargeable to the fire district, and that the hydrant value is $456.48. This was in 2019. If you calculate 69 hydrants at the $456.48, guess what you come up with? $125,988. The value of the hydrant was determined by the amount that the district was paying divided by the number of hydrants. It's like I go to the grocery store and I say I want $20 worth of food, and they hand me back 5 bags and they say they're $4 each. Well, is the bag $4 or is the food in it $4? How do we come up with that money, with that value? Because we're taking the amount that the water district wants to charge the fire district and simply dividing it by the number of viable hydrants. And to me, that doesn't make sense. If we can't place a value on the hydrant and then agree upon that value and then pay per hydrant per quarter, then the number that the fire district is determining is grabbing it out of thin air, just as the value that the water district is determining is pulled out of thin air. So what I would really like to know is what is the value of a hydrant? Thank you.
Paul, anybody care to offer a response? Further testimony on proposed amendment 1 to Article 15. Yes. I'm going to recognize Kevin first. Thank you.
Kevin J. Tilton. Back up a little bit. I was made aware of a letter that was sent out by the water district to all of the people who use the water regarding this warrant article.
and stated, or actually it used similar terms and terminology that Mr. Clark used in introducing the amendment to the warrant article that he didn't write. Sounds like it was written by Mr. Chase, who's one of the commissioners for the water district. And he used the word obligation. Mr. Chase used the term, we need to pay our bills. We don't have any bills that are due from the water district that are unpaid. That needs to be clear. There are no unpaid bills from the water district to the fire district. The fire district has incurred exorbitant legal fees through the course of 2021 because of the water district. They shut the water off at the fire station. And in order to get it turned back on, we had to go to court. And as a result, that ongoing court cases cost us tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees that are completely unnecessary. Last year, I asked the question of the chief, how many fires did we have that required the use of a hydrant? And the answer was 2. So we had 86 fires that responded to this year. Chief, how many required the use of a hydrant? 1. Were we able to use the hydrant for that 1 fire? And the reason we're able to use that hydrant, whether we have a contract with the water district or not, is because there's an RSA that states that we can in the case of an emergency. So why in God's good green earth would we want to spend $100,000 a year or more to pay for something that we used once? Once. I would much rather see us take that $100,000, and I believe it is in a warrant article further down the list, and put it towards building cisterns and dry hydrants, and be used throughout the district, not just where the water district has hydrants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Moderator recognizes Pat Clark.
Now, to address Paul's comment that the numbers were backed into, the numbers we inherited from PUC. When Ken Money, the former owner of the water company, went to sell it, he got an approval by PUC for certain rates. And every year since then, it was increased by 4%. But they, a couple of fire chiefs ago, we agreed, the water district agreed to check the hydrants to see how well they worked. And they found, and there was a certain rate or flow rate that they agreed to. And there were several of them that fell below that, so they didn't charge for those. So the total remaining number of hydrants was 69. And they've kept that number, even though today the number of hydrants is up to 103. So it's quite an increase in the number of hydrants, and I think it's well worth the charge. And they kept the charge the same. In fact, it's reduced from what the rate study came up with. And they didn't back into those rates. Again, it was because of PUC came up with the original rates. And then from then on, that's what was used. So I hope I answered the questions. The last one from the gentleman that got back microphone. I buy car insurance, I buy homeowners insurance, and I haven't had my house burned down. I haven't had my car, well, I should say I've been in a few accidents. But I have insurance to cover them. And the bottom line is, having hydrants in the water system is something that's good to have. And if you, having cisterns around the district to pay for, provide water is it's a long shot to come up with everything. We've got a very complicated water system, really detailed. The main that runs down over to exit 20 is a 12-inch main. That's a huge main. Are we going to wait until we have a fire to determine, let's go out and buy some pipe, dig the trench, put the, you don't have time to do it then. So having a system in place is really an important thing, and that's what the water company's done a pretty good job of. Other questions could be answered by the water commissioners as well.
Thank you, Pat. I guess I hadn't realized that fire chief was a measurement of time. There's a couple of fire chiefs ago. I'm going to recognize a couple other people first, Jerry, but I'll get to you for sure. Pat, please.
Thank you, Pat Constantino from Tilton. One was a question, and I'm confused here because we're talking about the amendment. The amendment had several figures with each year a different figure. My question would be to either Pat or the water company, preferably the water company. No misguided question over there for Pat, but I'd like the water company to speak on this. Is this a solid figure from the water company to present at their annual meeting to their users? That's the first question. And the second question is these cisterns that they're talking about. I mean, when you looked at the pie charts, and predominantly the issues were downtown in the village, where they're very tight and the buildings are very closely knit. I live down there, and I was one of the ones that lived within a few hundred, no, not even a few hundred feet of one of the hydrants that got shut off. It's a very eerie feeling. And my house is over 200 years old. And a lot of those houses in the village that are within a stone's throw of each other are over 200 years old. We're not talking about somebody's snowmobile or somebody's, car or whatever. This is life safety. This is what we're talking about. And, is it worth $131,000 for someone's life? What are we talking about here? I mean, can't we play well in the sandbox together and come up with a resolve? We've been listening to this as long as I've been a selectman, almost 14 years, talking about hydrants and how much they're worth. And nobody can, like Paul said, nobody can come up with a figure on how much a hydrant is worth. So I pay my water bill. I don't just pay for the water. I have to pay for the admin fee. I have to pay for the pump that's pumping the water. And I have to pay for all of the pipe that comes to give me the water. So why does the fire department think that they can only have to pay for a hydrant? They have to also pay for the admin fee and the pipe and the water to get the water to it. So let's get beyond it and let's talk about this. It seems like a reasonable fee. You've been paying $125,000. So it jumps to $131,000 over 10 years. That's very reasonable. Now I want to hear from the water company and see if that's a solid figure. And then maybe we could continue to talk about those three figures.
Thank you, Pat. Yes, sir. I'm going to recognize Jerry first. Yes, sir.
I got one small emergency number. What? There's a blue Toyota Prius that's parked next to the fire chief's vehicle. If I could ask the owner of that. Anybody own a blue Toyota Prius?
Blue Toyota Prius.
Where is the location? Next to the fire chief's vehicle. Is that your vehicle, blue Toyota Prius?
Probably mine.
Okay. Could I ask you to move that, sir? There's an employee that's right behind you that can't get out, if that's possible, sir.
It's going to be here.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Piper. All right, so Jerry, please.
Jerry Davis from Tilton. We always paid for the water works company when we were on it. We always did. And I don't know why now we're doing this, and I wish it could go back, we could pay for our water hydrants.
Thank you, Jerry. All right, before I hear from you again, Paul, I'd like to offer others an opportunity. Anybody else would like to provide testimony? Deb, please.
Here in Northfield. I'm just looking for some clarification. As a few people have already mentioned, the fire district has been paying at least $125,000 for 20 plus years. So why all of a sudden is this an issue? Can anybody answer that question?
John, please.
So, hold on a second, John. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so essentially last year, it was presented for $125,988. So it was presented to the public. The commissioners answered to the public. We put in their clause that if it was not passed by the public, we could not do it. I made sure that clause was in there because we couldn't obligate funds if the body here did not approve it. And it's unfortunate, it was a very small turnout and lost by 1 vote, but that's the reason why that we got into a trap situation where we can't go out and spend money if it's not approved. There's special committees, special meetings, and things like that could happen, but there was a lack of communication going back and forth to try and get a number to present as a special meeting. We could schedule a special meeting, which the court wants to do, but we needed a dollar amount.
So if I may ask another question, when you and the water district met, there was no consensus as to what is a fair amount to pay, or were you siding on the fact that you wanted to pay nothing?
John?
I'm going to just make sure I don't step into a legal quagmire. When we met with them, we had their intention to pay if there was a fair amount to bring to the public for a special meeting. There was a difference, a significant difference in the amount, but we were looking at that so we were looking at that option, but the difference was big. And I want to be careful because of the pending litigation. I don't want to step into something and say I'm not supposed to for the lawyer side of things. So I'm just going to be cautious of that. But we did go into good faith of trying to find a fair amount.
Thank you, John. Moderator recognizes Sean Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sean Chandler from Northfield, and I'm chairman of the Water District. I think it's a fair question that Paul proposed in terms of what's the value of a fire hydrant. I would second what Pat Constantino said about the system at large and how to come up with a fair price that works for everybody. Fire protection is important. Every community member, I think, would hopefully agree to that. The number that we attempted to arrive at, as Mr. Silly indicated, was roughly $125,000. My understanding is that number was in place for possibly 15 years or longer. Is that your understanding, the 3 commissioners, as far as you know?
John, please.
I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
No, I'm not sure of the 15-year part. That was before I've been following the stuff. I can accept the $125,000. The public voted it down.
Yeah, that's not my point. Paul, do you have a recollection of what the number was in previous
Back and
years?
forth, please.
Sean, please.
Paul, do you have a recollection of what the number was in previous years?
John, please, or Paul?
I guess it probably was around there, whether it was 125, but it was close.
Okay, the fact is that it was pretty much $125,000, and it was for several years. So when we're arguing about what is a fair price for a fire hydrant,
at $125,000 for the number of fire hydrants over, my understanding is at least 15 years, the price of a fire hydrant was never really an issue because those 5-year contracts for at least 3 terms passed. And it wasn't until the Budget Committee last year decided that that contract needed to be brought before the voters.
I don't hear a question, I'm hearing testimony.
It's just testimony. But in terms of a question, is there a reason that the members of the Budget Committee could give to me in terms of why it was decided to be brought before the voters last year, but yet in previous years it never was?
Someone from the Budget Committee? Jason, please.
Jason Wright. I would say, in my recollection of having been on the Budget Committee, that the water annually was brought on as a warrant article every year, and it wasn't until it got into the contracts, and it was still an encumbrance of funds that it had always been before the body, whether it was for 1 year or for multiple years. I remember voting for an annual warrant article almost every year for pressurized hydrants.
So you had no
Thank you,
problem.
Jason.
So
You have to follow. I'm sorry, you want to follow up?
yes.
Okay, please do.
So as far as your contribution, Jason, you never had a problem with 125,000?
Jason.
That's a different question. I have a huge problem with $125,000.
Mr. Moderator,
But
point of order.
I'm just one voter.
All right.
Am I not allowed to ask questions?
You're allowed to ask questions, Sean. It's just how many questions in a row that we can handle.
Okay.
Right. You provided your testimony. If you're cool for the moment,
That's fine.
you can come back.
Sure.
This one's something else.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, I have a question had to be directed to you.
They should be directed to me. Appreciate that, thank you.
Scott Haskins, Northfield. We're talking about Pat's article, or if Article 13 fails, what happens next?
Anybody respond to that? John?
So if Article 13 fails, we will not have funds to go into any possible negotiation or contract with the water district without a special meeting that we would have to schedule and come back to for the 2022 year, not for the 2021. I want to make that very clear. This is the present point where we're at. Right now, there is no agreement in any way, so if this fails, that means there is no money available to look at putting together a contract for the 2022 year, or going for the contract for that time period.
Thank you, John. I have a follow-up question. Do we owe them anything?
John?
So currently, that's part of the litigation process. There's different philosophies on where the money is owed to them. As I read, or I could read that when we signed the contract, we made sure we put in there that if it was voted down by the public, it null and voided the contract. Last year, we used about 5,000 gallons of water. For that, a fair market value for water, that might be something that could be discussed with and might somehow be able to be found in the budget for that amount. But that is something that goes to the courts and the litigation to be down the road. As of right now, we just owe them monthly for our domestic usage at Center Street and domestic in a small fill at Park Street.
Thank you, John. Moderator recognizes Greg Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We heard information or data for 2 years. We heard 1 fire for last year and 2 fires the year before. Do we have the data for prior years to know if that's an aberration or that's a trend or that's anything like? No, we don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Moderator recognizes Kevin Walden.
The Budget Committee has zero authority when it comes to writing the warrant. That authority rests solely with the Board of Commissioners. The Budget Committee voted not to recommend it. As to the question of what makes it a hot topic now, I came here in 2002 and this was an annual warrant article for pressurized hydrants, right up until at some point, a particular Board of Commissioners decided to take it off the warrant and put the money in the budget. Only after repeated badgering did they bring it back to the people. There was a study done, can't tell you what year, well, what departments that are part of the Lake Street Fire Association pay for hydrants. We were by far the highest at that point. I don't know of anything that would have changed that over time. Some towns own their fire department, own their water system. And I think even in some of those communities, there is at least a paper trail of the expense. As we sit here tonight, there is no agreement on the table or being considered. So there is no need to raise and appropriate any money. And I can only speak on the amendment, correct?
We would prefer that we only speak to the amendment, but there's been some overlap. It's somewhat unavoidable.
Okay, then I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. There is something coming through the sound system or something. Somebody's got a phone. I don't know where that's coming from, but I don't know if anybody else can hear it, but I'm hearing it. Just might check your phones, make sure it's on silent. Pat, just one second. Is there anybody that hasn't provided testimony yet that would like to speak to the amendment? Pat, please.
Just wanted a clarification. If we voted on the amendment, does it limit us to they go back to the table and negotiate with the water company, does it limit us to the maximum amount of each year that had given us for the figures?
Anybody respond to that? John, please.
I believe the way that the amendment's written, it would be for that, it does not say up to each year or around, it says that amount. So it could not go any higher than that each year.
So the amendment gives, follow up on that, the amendment gives specific figures higher than $100,000. So if it's the last 14 or so years, 15 years, it's been 125,000. Pat's figures are 131, 140 something, I forget what the figures are, I think you have them in front of you. That gives them a little bit of wiggle room if they decided to go with, say, 120 then, or no, it's very specific.
John, please.
And how I heard it,
You might be on.
Can you reread the amendment? Can you reread the amendment, because I think that allows them to.
Okay, so the amendment, see if the district will vote to authorize the commissioners to enter into a 3-year agreement beginning January 1st, 2022, ending December 31st, 2024, in the amount of $425,377.76 for the purpose of providing pressurized hydrants. I'll paraphrase from there on. Annual costs of $136,269 for 2022. $141,719 for 2023, and $147,388 for 2024. I don't see anything that says less than, above, etc. Those are the amounts that are provided. Thank you, Pat. Further testimony. I'm going to recognize Kevin first.
Stand up. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is a mess. as long as I've been a registered voter, we passed this out. Where's Joe DeMello and you? I'm not in favor of this amendment, and the reason being is this is a broken relationship. If we will conquer through this somehow, whether it's through litigation, but I think entering into a multi-year agreement in a broken relationship would not be in our best interest. I am in favor of providing some type of a number to pay the water district for their services. I could go on for hours on the details behind the scenes in the water system, fire suppression. There's not enough time tonight. I have one question for the chief before I go on, if I may. Of that one fire that was in the district this year, was it inside the fire, inside the water precinct, or was it outside? Chief?
It was inside.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. There are many times where the hydrant system is used outside of the hydrant district for fire suppression. We all know that. We've hashed that out for years. So in my mind, it's only fair that as the two communities, we pay for the entirety of the fire district through this mechanism that we have. Because otherwise, it's going to be pushed on to the end users. I think there's 99 of us or whatever it is. So it's a very low number. And I don't think that that's fair, and I think it should be spread out. 99?
About 1,000.
Okay.
Whatever.
What's 900? I mean, but anyway, it should be spread out. So I'd like to see us vote on something tonight, but not on this amendment. I think it's a broken relationship. Let's get there, folks. This is important.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for speaking to the amendment. Joyce?
I'm going to get in trouble for speaking against the amendment here. But this is my experience has been, one of the reasons, I mean, it was okay before having it just as a line item in the budget because you weren't committing future funds. Anything over $100,000, you have to get the legislative body to approve that. Long-term contracts for certain services are a good thing. Then you know how to plan going forward. I think that paying for the fire district, paying a price for pressurized hydrants, fire district for the two towns, I think should pay money for that. And I'll liken this to when we're negotiating union contracts with police departments. You grind it out, and you grind it out until you come and you agree on a number. Give us a firm number that both parties want, because we're paying it. We're paying it, and then present it, and then we'll help you get as many people as you need for a special meeting if you need a special meeting. The other thing I feel uncomfortable about this is that when there's a legal case going on, I don't want to get involved in that. Let the two parties work it out because they both want to do good things. I mean, the fire district was offered the opportunity years ago. They could have bought the water company. And they said, no, we just want to put out the fires. Give us the water, we'll do the work. The other thing that concerns me, and then I'll be quick, the Tilton downtown, everybody in Northfield drives through it. You know, we're all the same district. And if there were ever, and help me pronounce the word right, conflagration, is that the word, were to happen in all the areas where there are hydrants, it would be like Chernobyl. I mean, we would lose everything. And it's just not worth, I think both parties have to, if anything goes back to the two parties that are negotiating, come on. You know, work it out, what's reasonable, what's affordable, and I'll tell you, then we'll make sure that we get people out to come to a special meeting and go from there. Is that okay?
Thank you, Jason. All right, I know Paul would like to, Mark, please.
Mark Schubert, Northfield. I also agree we should pay our fair share, but as the commissioner stated, nobody can come up with what a fair share is. Just curious for anybody maybe, do the hydrants still work if we don't pay and we need to hook up to them?
Can anybody respond to that?
So to answer everybody else's questions, if, sorry, I can't use the term, but Chernobyl were to happen downtown, water's still going to come out of them, we can still put out the fires we need to put out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Further testimony? Okay, I'm gonna recognize Paul first. Paul, please.
Very quick comment. I'm not opposed to paying for the hydrant. What I need to know is what is the value of a hydrant. Now, we can't go on the open market and buy a hydrant, so there's no stock market or there's no supermarket to tell us what a hydrant costs. So I think this number is going to be a little bit difficult to arrive at. So what we have to do as a district is determine what the value of a hydrant is to us and compare that to the water district, which places, of course, a different value on that. And once we agree upon that, that's what the value of a hydrant is, right? It's an agreed upon value. So let's try to get to that value, and then we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. You can be recognized in a moment. I'm going to recognize Kevin.
The numbers in the amendment as proposed, at least according to the letter the Water District sent out, do not even cover the quote-unquote cost of providing a hydrant service. That letter claims it's $200,000 plus, and it's set to go up in 2022. So at no point, if you're concerned about covering the cost, which personally I'm not, there still isn't enough money in this amendment to accomplish that.
Thank you, Kevin. Further testimony from anyone who hasn't spoken yet. John, are you a resident?
No.
Okay. Pat, please.
It was talked about by one person behind me here that we need to justify and figure out exactly what a hydrant is worth. And what I was telling him is that PUC came up with that computation when we bought the water, when they bought the water company. You know, the water company was bought. That was the figure that they came up with. And we've used that figure ever since, other than it was added to every year by 4% as of this warrant article amendment that I had read off, or had you read off for me. So what I'm saying is that they still came down based on those original figures that PUC had come up with and projected out ahead. And what I'm saying is that if we went with the rate study, we would not be saving $211,000, or excuse me, $75,000 for the first year. And the second year, even though the price went up by the per hydrant, they saved $78,000. And in the third year, it was $81,000 that was saved. So I think that the water company did come down, and I think it's a palatable price. And I would like to hope that we would not be stuck here again, waiting for 2 court cases. So anyway, I hope I've answered any questions that were.
All right, thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Further testimony from anyone who has yet to speak. Scott, please.
Scott Lewandowski, Northfield. So I am in favor of paying our fair share. I don't think we know what that number is yet. So to give some context, this is the most communication we have had with the water district to date by far. We've requested information from them long in the budget committee and nobody showed up, nobody came to talk to us, we literally had no communication other than what was from the fire commissioners. And there is a court issue, so I don't think we can go into all of it. But for me personally, I don't think I have enough information to understand what it is we're getting for our money just yet. I'm kind of looking for what they do for hydrant services. I know that they flush them, they test them, they're supposed to remove the water from them. I know a couple years ago it froze early and there was an issue with them freezing. But I'm just kind of looking for, from a year-to-year basis, what actually gets done to them from a maintenance standpoint. I haven't heard kind of any information yet on that as far as how that would affect cost.
Thank you, Scott. All right. Any further testimony from those that have yet to speak? Pat, please.
I would just like to ask if it would be okay to ask the legislative body for John Chase has had his hand. I know he's not a registered voter, but it's been common practice to ask the legislative body for permission for him to speak. And I, as a part of the legislative body, I would really like to educate my vote.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up, Pat. I was going to come back to that. But, so we've had a request to hear from John from the aqueduct. Well, I don't know what we call it now, but we used to call it the aqueduct. I'm just going to go to a vote on that. The Assembly, those in favor of hearing from John Chase, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes have it. John, would you care to share some testimony with us? John.
Hi, thank you. John Chase, Superintendent with Tilton Northfield Aqueduct. I've been with the company for 25 years, and I've seen a lot of changes. I mean, we have done so many improvements to this system over the years, and it's been nothing but for the better of this community. When the first negotiated contract with the fire district happened, they asked us to go out and flow test all the hydrants in town, and it was agreed upon that anything below 450 gallons a minute would be removed from the cost to the fire district. And at that time, it was we had 80-something hydrants, and we reduced it to 69 hydrants to come out with the 125,988. Because the dollar figure for our hydrant back then was $515 a change. So that 69 that you asked about is the only way to bill it was 69 times 515 came out to 125.98. Today, the water company has spent millions and millions in improvements since I've been here, and we are continuing to have to do improvements. EPA is changing rules. We are going to be going for a filtration plant. That's the first one coming up, and there's another one coming up in 24. There's going to be more costs of replacing even more mains. To say, I have looked everywhere. I have looked at to put a cost on who charging what for hydrants. And there is not one town in any community in this whole entire state that charges the same way for the same thing, for whether it's the cost of water or the cost of hydrants. Everybody's different. When the water district was purchased, the PUC was the aqueduct was regulated by the PUC. They set the rates back then. The water district took those rates and have used them ever since for almost 20 years with zero changes. They negotiated a reduced contract with the fire district for 14 years with zero changes. The water district went out and did a rate study by a third party to justify the cost. And the cost for water service fire protection is somewhere between 5 and 20% of the water district's budget. And we're at 9%. So that is how they justify how to charge the hydrants today. It's at the same as he said it back in those days. I don't know if I can address any other questions, but that's how everything came about.
Thank you, John. Further testimony regarding Amendment 1 to Article 13. John, please. See Kirk running.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk. John Scanlon, Tilton. One of the things we have to keep in mind is that if everybody in the town and all uses all just had a 3/4 inch pipe supplying water, the water district could use much smaller pumps, much smaller mains, and not have to have all kinds of backup systems, and that, as well as all this water has to be filtered properly and processed, because it's also our drinking water. But since we have fire hydrants, they're available, so we can draw, I don't know the number, how many gallons per minute or that, but a lot of water in case of a fire. We have to build out, or the water district had to build out the system with pumps, with all of the pipes, so that it can handle this extra water flow. That's where the cost is. It's not the price of a cast iron thing that dogs enjoy. It's the cost of the whole system. It's the cost of those pumps. It's the cost because now we have to have water that's filtered in a larger quantity too, just in case. As Pat said, it's insurance. If we need it, it's there, and those pumps and those pipes can supply to, even if it's one fire hydrant, it's there, it's ready for us.
Thank you, John. Kevin.
Something that Mr. Chandler mentioned kind of stuck with me. He talked about the upgrades that need to be made because of the EPA regulations, and I've had discussions with the chief about this. You know, we don't need potable water for a fire hydrant. So it's great that you're providing this nice clean water, but everybody talks about our fair share. I agree we need to pay something for fire hydrants, for pressurized hydrants. But to pay for potable water come out of a hydrant that's going on one fire per year seems a little bit exorbitant to me. And it needs to be reiterated over and over and over and over again, so that people who are afraid of a conflagration or of their 200-year-old home burning, the hydrants are there, the hydrants work, the hydrants can be used if there's a fire. Mr. LaChapelle, I think, qualified this relationship very well when he said it was broken. We want to equate it to a marriage, we need to have a marriage counselor come between the fire district and the water district. We can't appropriate money for something that doesn't exist. The commissioners come to us on an annual basis and say, we need to buy a new engine. And we've spent past year researching, and this is what we came up with. It's going to cost $700,000, and this is what we're buying. This is what we're going to get for $700,000. This year they want us to approve buying a new command vehicle, and it's going to cost $53,000 or whatever the number is. We know what that number is. We have one of the commissioners, the water district commissioners, sitting here tonight, who signed that letter that says their cost to maintain these hydrants is over $200,000. In fact, I could pull it up on my phone, but it's $201,000 and change for last year. And it's going up in 2022. So why would they accept $140,000, which doesn't meet their alleged costs? This is ludicrous. Get the commissioners together, agree agree on a number and bring it to the voters. For those of us who have children, when they're in their teen years, I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible. Right? Your teenage daughter comes to you and says, "Hey, Dad, I want to go to the mall and buy some new clothes." Okay, how much are you going to spend? Oh, I don't know. Just give me everything in your wallet, and whatever's left, I'll bring back. That's what you guys want to do with this. You want me to give you $143,000 this year, and we don't know if that's enough. We don't know if that's too much. We don't know if the water department will accept that. So why in the world do we want to give the fire district $143,000 this year, or however much over the next 2 years, for something that we don't know whether we can buy or not? Because they're not going to give us that money back. Comes out, it adds to our tax bill. Pay for something that we don't know if we can buy. That's like the chief saying, "Give me $500,000 so I can buy a new engine, but I don't know if the engine costs $500,000. It might cost more. And I don't know if I can get a new engine because they're 3 years out, but maybe I can get one if I ask real nicely." I oppose this amendment if you haven't been able to figure that out yet, because there are far too many unknowns. There are some knowns. The fire hydrants are there. The fire hydrants work. And we can use the fire hydrants until some kind of an agreement is worked out and we have a number and we know what that is.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, we have heard considerable testimony. Peter, and I see. Well, you haven't been recognized, sorry. And I do see that Kevin wanted to speak. I'll accept Kevin, and I will recognize Jason. Jason.
Mr. Moderator, call the question on the
All right, I'll accept that. Is there a second? Second, Mark, please. All right, so it has been moved and seconded to call the question on Amendment 1 to Article 13. Those in favor of calling the question, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes grumblingly have it. All right, so Amendment 1 to Article 13. To see if the district will vote to authorize the commissioners to enter into a 3-year agreement beginning January 1st, 2022, ending December 31st, 2024, in the amount of $425,377.76 for the purpose of providing pressurized hydrant services necessary for fire suppression and raise and appropriate the annual costs of $269.14 for 2022, $141,719.91 for 2023, and $147,388.71 for 2024. Those in favor of Amendment 1 to Article 13, please signify so with saying clarification.
So this vote is on the amendment and the amendment only. If it passes, it becomes Article 13, and there will be further discussion.
Yes, there's going to be further discussion either way. Yep. So we're just voting on the amendment, which is essentially to change the number of years and the amount per year from what was in the original article. Anybody have any questions about what we're voting on here? Amendment 1, as proposed. Those in favor of Amendment 1 to Article 13, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay? Nay. I'm going to take a card vote on this. I'm sorry. Just enough doubt. Sometimes the voice vote is difficult. So, Assistant Moderator, please. favor of our Amendment 1 to Article 13, please hold up your cards now. Thank you. Those opposed to Amendment 1 to Article 13, please hold up your cards now.
Sorry, that's...
Okay, those in favor were 9, those opposed 33. Amendment 1 to Article 13 fails. So clear. So we're back to the original article. Unless you prefer, I'm not going to read it again. Further testimony on Article 13.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Kevin Marshall from Tilton. This question is directed to you, Mr. Moderator. Is there a way for us tonight to find a number between the fire district and the water district to pay one annual fee while we repair this broken relationship?
Are you posing that question to me, or
you can ask whoever you want? I'm asking you the question.
Somebody in a position to respond to that? Educated a response.
You amend the article.
So there's a suggestion that it would be another amendment. I'd say that's true, but based on what we heard for testimony, I don't know how we came up with that number. Captain, further? Any other question?
Mr. Moderator, my only question is, with the article as it is, if we're to Mr. LaChapelle's suggestion of trying to do a 1 year, I don't think the intent would be met of the same article. I think it would be a different article at this point. I think the intent would be stretched.
I would have to agree with you there, Jason. That would be changing the intent and spirit of the article as approved by DRA to put on the warrant. In other words, if you're going to change the number of years, the spirit of it is to set rates that they come into an agreement for a number of years and set a rate on it. So if you're thinking it's going to do 1 year, I'm not sure that flies. Further testimony, Article 13. Mike.
Mike Robinson, down at Tilton. I haven't watched the room as we discussed this evening, and heard people talking about they wouldn't talk to us, they won't talk to them. I watched the reaction on both sides, and everybody kind of looked at each other like, not us. These are people in our community. Water District's done a good job of providing a service for this community over the years. But I'm starting to dice up where we are. It sounds like we got a court's going to tell us what our bill is for 2021, and the court may tell us what our bill is for 2022. And we got to pay that bill if that's the way it comes through. So we don't know what the number is, whether we use Pat's number or this number. How do we? This doesn't seem like it's an emergency, so that if the court says you owe money, will the court allow us to have an emergency meeting? Is that a true emergency? I guess I'm asking the question. Or do we wait till next year? Because it sounds like we want to pay something, and we just got to agree what that number is. But we don't have that number to go by. So I mean, how do we get there? And like I say, I see people on the water districts that grew up in this community, and I would think we could talk to them and come up with something, because I'm getting the impression, tell me if I'm wrong, we want to do something, we just don't know what it is. But we can't come up with a number. Do we table this? Can we schedule a meeting without having to call an emergency meeting once we know the results? I don't know all the legalities, but how do we vote on a number we haven't gotten? I call a question and ask to table it, what have you. You still don't know.
Thank you, Mike. Just regarding special meeting, there is a process in place to request a special meeting. It can be petitioned, and that can happen at any time.
Was that just a call for a table?
I'm not going to accept it because he gave testimony prior to that, and that would be calling to end testimony after he had his say. I'm sorry, Kevin, please.
It's my understanding that the court has in fact ordered a special meeting, special district meeting. If I'm wrong, someone tell me now, but I think that that is the case.
Thank you, Kevin. Further testimony, Article 13. Greg, please.
If that's the case, then tabling it is the logical thing, so I will call the table.
All right. There is a motion to table Article 13. Is there a second? Seconded by Kevin. All right. Tabling ends debate. So we need a 2,000. I'm sorry. It's only Article 13. It's a two-thirds majority has to be in favor of tabling Article 13 for that to pass. Point of order.
Previously, Mr. Robinson asked for it to be tabled, and you said he couldn't because he hadn't spoken his word. And now the same situation happened with Mr. Hill, and I just want to know what's the difference.
I didn't hear the same level of testimony. I think really all he did was step up to. He said something about if that's the case, table it. I accept that as a motion to table.
And that's a fair intention.
Thank you. Okay, so we are at a point here where we have ended debate for the moment to vote on a motion to table Article 13. Those in favor of tabling Article 13, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay?
Nay.
All right, this takes a 2/3 majority, so I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask for a count of votes. Those in favor of tabling Article 13, please raise your cards now.
Oh, this is the table?
This is the table.
We're going to get there.
Those opposed to tabling Article 13, please raise your card now.
Year.
All right, the vote was 26 in favor, 16 opposed. We needed needed 28 votes in favor of to pass tabling the 2/3 vote. So the motion fails. Back to Item 13.
Mr. Moderator.
Kevin.
Kevin Marshall from Pilgrim Still. A couple of questions in the spirit of creating a motion to move us a year down the road and pay for water. We heard the chairman of the water district say the number $125,000. I may stand corrected. If that number is in fact the number that will cost for this year's water to get us in motion for repairing the relationship, I might be in favor of creating a motion to do that.
All right, so
I need a number.
Okay, are you proposing to do a payment for 1 year? Is that what you're proposing to do?
Yes, an agreement for 1 year to create a number to move the ball down the field for 1 more year so we can come to some agreement. There's details that have not been brought into this meeting tonight due to legal action that I would imagine will be discussed in court. But we need to fix this somehow. And I'm with Mr. Kate, we need to hire a marriage counselor to sit down and say, you will meet on this date, you will meet 6 times a year, and you will be here to attend. And we're going to work through the details. Because as Deputy Robinson said, there's a broken communication. It's all we've heard for an hour and 45 minutes. Enough is enough.
Are you proposing an amendment?
No, I asked a question. $125,000, does that give us, is that enough money to get us through 1 year? So and the reason that I say that, so this is addressed to the body, my concern is if we get 2 years down the road and one way or the other, we're going to pay for this, whether it's through attorney's fees or quite possibly the judge says that you have to pay all those back fees, then we're going to pay. And if we don't set that money aside now to pay for at least 1 year, we're going to have bigger problems than we have now.
Okay, so is your question, is $125,000 enough for 1 year? Is that the question?
That is the question.
Anybody care to respond to that, Kevin? Please, thanks.
You can't do that because the water commissioners haven't had a legal meeting to make that decision, and neither have the fire commissioners. Any decision made here tonight by either board would be an unlawful meeting. It was not warned properly. They're not in session. They cannot decide anything tonight. So you could put $1 or whatever amount you want, but caution you that changing it to anything but a multi-year deal is not going to fly by DRA. It changes the spirit and the intent of the original warrant.
Thank you, Kevin. Follow on that, Kevin?
I don't think I have a follow-up. My concern is the fact that we're going to pay somehow. And I thank you, Mr. Wallner, because that makes sense to me, what he just said. The concern is if we don't set money aside now, and we come back to a district meeting 3 years from now, and we have to bond $500,000 to pay for back water fees, that's where we're really going to pay.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, please.
I'll yield the floor to Mr.
Oh, okay, thanks. All right. So I do want to remind everybody, we've had considerable testimony regarding it, and I understand we'll go as long as we need to. Just hoping we don't hear more of the same testimony, always. Point of order? Well, I'm going to hear him first.
I'd like to ask for the unassigned fund balance, and just the question would be to the chief if possible. Is there contingency for a legal settlement being set aside from the unassigned fund balance in the event that this goes to court and there is a finding against us. And this is to address, hopefully, Mr. LaChapelle's concern about there not being money to pay us out.
So what is your question again, please?
Is there money set aside from the unassigned fund balance in order to pay a settlement if we lose in court?
Mike?
Sure. So when we had our auditors looked at what the water district billed the fire district in 2021. That amount came up to $201,502. The auditors took that amount and set that aside and reduced our unassigned fund balance because of that. So technically, there's that $201,000 that's been set aside pending, I guess, litigation.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Have you been waiting? Just kidding. I'm sorry. Catherine, just 1 second, Catherine. Catherine's been waiting. I thought she was just holding the mic. Catherine.
I just want to make a comment. Last year, we asked our commissioners essentially to negotiate with the water district and come up with a figure for us. They've been trying to do that. And I think we need to give them that support. They're asking for $500,000 in case they do come up with an agreement. And I think we should support him in that.
Thank you, Catherine. Kevin, please. Yes, Scott.
I'd like to call the question.
Yay.
I'll accept that. Is there a second to that? All right, second, Rachel. All right. The motion is to call the question and end debate on Article 13. Again, needed two-thirds in favor to call a question. Those in favor of calling the question on Article 13, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Moderator is nodding now. Motion passes, and we're calling the question on Article 13. So I'm going to read this again because it's been so long. You understand the spirit of it. It's a 5-year agreement, and there's numbers associated. So it's to see if the district will vote to authorize the commissioners to enter into a 5-year agreement beginning January 1st, 2022, ending December 31st, 2026, in the amount of $500,000 for the purpose of providing pressurized hydrant services necessary for fire suppression and raise and appropriate the annual cost of $100,000 for this year. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and not recommended by the Budget. Those in favor of Article 13 as read, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Nays have it. I'm not in doubt. Article 13 fails. We are back at Article 5. Moderator? Yes, sir.
Protect the vote on Article 13.
Yes, sir. Is there a second? Second, Mark Keeper. Okay, discussion on the motion? Yes, sir. All right. Those in favor of restricting reconsideration of the vote on Article 13, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare that the vote is protected. Article 5. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the Land and Building Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is recommended by the Budget Committee. Is there a motion? So moved by Pat, second. Mary Davis, please. Can someone speak to the article? Paul, please.
Yeah, this is money away, so hopefully someday we can build a fire station. I think we had put money away last year and the year before. We should continue it.
Thank you, Paul. Further discussion on Article 5. Kevin, please.
Kevin K. Tilton, I'm in favor of this, but I have a question. How much is in that fund currently?
Someone respond to that? Mike, please.
The amount in the land building fund currently is $555,200. $279.22.
And if this is approved, it'll bring it to another over 600,000.
That's correct.
Again, I'm in favor of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Further discussion, further testimony, Article 5. Seeing none, you ready for the vote? All right, do I need to read the article again? Anybody? No, okay, Article 5. Those in favor of Article 5 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, I so declare it. Article 5 passes. Article 6, I'm sorry, does anybody want to propose to protect it? Okay, Article 6. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $9,627 for the purpose of adding to the existing fire prevention expendable trust fund, with said funds to be withdrawn from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Pat, seconded by Jerry Davis. Somebody speak to Article 6. Eric.
This is the funds the funds generated from this are from the inspections that the fire department does. It's taken from the unassigned fund balance and put into the trust fund, so that in the next article we actually take the monies out for spending, but for now it's just to put the money out of the unassigned fund balance into the actual trust fund.
Thank you, Eric. Further discussion, Article 6. Seeing none, does anybody want me to read the article again? No. Okay. Those in favor of Article 6 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare Article 6 passes. Article 7. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,488 for the purpose of purchasing materials, tools, and equipment related to public education, code enforcement, training, etc., with said funds to be withdrawn from the Fire Prevention Expendable Trust Fund. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is recommended by the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion? So moved by Pat. Second? Second, Jason Wright. Someone speak to the article, please. Eric.
This is the money that they actually take out to spend on the different materials that they use for training and fire prevention programs. And then the leftover money, the difference between the $9,000 in the previous article and the $4,500 or so. In this article goes into the fund, goes eventually towards the replacement of the fire prevention trailer.
Thanks, Eric. For the discussion on Article 7. Seeing none, do I need to read the article again? No. Okay. Those in favor of Article 7 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Moderator is not in doubt. The ayes have it. Article 7 passes. Article 8. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,836 for the purpose of adding to the existing health insurance deductible expendable trust fund, with said funds to be withdrawn from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is recommended by the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion? So moved by Jason, second.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Can somebody speak to Article 8? Paul, please.
All we're doing is putting the money back in there, just move from there, keep it at the current rate that's in there now.
Thanks, Paul. For the testimony, Article 8. Do I need to read it? Okay. Those in favor of Article 8 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare that Article 8 passes. Article 9. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 for the purpose of adding to the existing communications tower expendable trust fund, with said funds to be withdrawn from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is recommended by the Budget Committee. Majority vote required. Is there a motion? So moved by Jason, second by Jerry Davis. Can somebody speak to the article, please, John?
So this is to take funds out. We're trying to set it aside for future funds. This is coming from the unassigned fund balance, so it does not go against taxation. And this is part of that the communications tower that we're trying to set the fund, and then we'll pull from that to use for other expenses down the road.
Thanks, John. Further testimony? Yes, Kevin, please.
My understanding is that we have received a payment of $5,000 from someone related to this tower. And the way the tower fund was set up, 50% goes into this fund and 50% goes to reduce operational costs, is that correct?
Are you asking a question? Can somebody answer? Yes, John.
I believe that is correct.
Okay, following, please.
So this is actually revenue. This isn't going to end up on your tax bill. I believe would be, is it unanticipated revenue?
John, please.
I'm not sure I can answer.
Mike, please.
This is actual revenue that we received last year for the building permit for the tower. Once the tower is constructed and the tenant is on the tower and operating, we will then receive rent for that which would, as this fund is set up, would go into this account.
Thank you, Mike. Further testimony? Scott, please.
Yeah, so how much is in the fund?
Mike, please.
Currently, $1, and if this article is passed, it'll be $2,501.
Follow-up question.
Please.
This is just a question and a concern or reasoning, I guess. Is it possible to put in the articles that are written when there's a fund that put in the amount that's in the fund balance? That's not possible?
Anybody has some question?
So we would have to ask what's in the fund balance every time the article comes up.
Right, well, I don't know if it could be in the balance, but it would behoove us perhaps to whoever introduces the article to add that in. Thank you. Further testimony, Article 9. Seeing none, do I need to read the article again? Okay. Those in favor of Article 9 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, I so declare Article 9 passes. Article 10, to see if the district will vote to establish a dry hydrant cistern expendable trust fund per RSA 31:19-a. Expenditures from this fund will be used for the design, engineering, purchasing of materials, installation, and any fees or permits required to install dry hydrants and cisterns within the district, and to raise and appropriate $1 to put in the fund, with this amount to come from the unassigned fund balance. Further, to name the Board of Commissioners as agents to expend from said fund. Future funding will come from warrant articles at annual district meetings. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is recommended by the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there any motions? So moved by Jane. Second. Jason. Somebody speak to the article, please. John.
I will. So we started seeing this last year, that water was a potential issue. You do have pressurized hydrants in certain parts of the district, but there's other parts of the district where it's very remote and away from ponds, rivers, things like that. This is going to set up a fund so that we can look at installing dry hydrants, cisterns throughout the district as appropriate. So this is the fund to set that up. It's expensive to do this. You have to go through a lot of red tape, working with the landowner or things like that. But this would allow us to start possibly caching water throughout the district for usage when it's an emergency.
Thank you, John. Further testimony, Article 10. Jason.
I think this is a good direction for us to have as not our primary water, but accessory, and there are places that the water district does not reach. There are also places in the downtown where we have the Winnipesaukee River. I know Pat gave testimony about the village being houses on top of each other. Well, look at all the water that's right down at the mill. So, I mean, there are existing dry hydrants that we have, but we have opportunities throughout the district and look at, you know, and go and put these structures and these accessories where there aren't pressurized hydrants or near pressurized hydrants that may or may not flow. I didn't get to give testimony on the prior failed warrant article, but I remember the time when they color-coded all the hydrants, red, green, blue, and so forth, because don't use the red one, use the orange or use the green one, because they all had different flow rates. So this getting in this direction is just one more way we can bring water to where it needs to go.
Thanks, Jason. Further testimony, Article 10. Seeing none, those in favor of Article 10 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare Article 10 passes. Article 11, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the dry hydrant cistern expendable trust fund previously established. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is recommended by the Budget Committee. The majority vote is required. Is there a motion? So moved by Kevin, second. What are they just thinking? Somebody speak to the article. John, please.
So this is essentially to start putting funds into that account to get it started. Cisterns can be expensive, dry hydrants depending on the land use, things like that. So this is starting to get the process going. This isn't going to immediately pop up 10 different locations next year, but this is going to start the process going in the direction we need to with this.
Thank you, John. Further testimony. Paul, please.
Could someone tell me what the cost of a cistern or dry hydrant is in general terms? Is it 10,000? Is it?
Mike, please.
So I've done a lot of research on this. Generally, a cistern is depending upon the land and the other things that have to go on, development costs, the site work. You're probably going to spend $65,000 to $85,000 for a cistern, a dry hydrant, anywhere from $4,000 to $12,000, depending upon the site work needed to do the work.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Thank you. Kevin.
This kind of thing is right up my alley. It's forward-thinking. We should have done this long ago. Very beneficial outside the hydrant district. And I believe on this warrant tonight, this may very well be the best money we spend.
Thanks, Kevin. Further testimony, Article 11. Yeah, right. Mike, please.
So just for those of you who know anything about ISO, Insurance Service Rating Organization, they're the folks that a lot of insurance companies use to help establish an insurance rate for your house for fire protection. Cisterns, once installed and tested, are a certified water source. And at any house or residence or building within a certain diameter, which can be anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 feet from that cistern, qualify as if the same as if it was right next to a fire hydrant. So these will help reduce some of the folks' tax rates as we start installing these, and I see it's a good thing going forward.
Thanks, Mike, for the testimony, Article 11. Seeing none, those in favor of Article 11 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare Article 11 passes. Article 12. To see if the district will vote to establish a contingency fund per RSA 31:98-a and raise and appropriate $29,404 to put in the fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is not recommended by the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second? Thank you, Jerry. All right, can somebody speak to the article? Eric, please.
This is a contingency fund and the money comes from 1% of the previous year's budget, and that's what's put into contingency fund. If the money is not used, it goes back into the unassigned fund balance.
Thank you, Eric. Pat, please.
At Constantino, I've never been a fan of contingency fund. It's really a slush fund, and I was just, I think Eric answered my question, how they came up with a specific $29,404, and he said 1%. I am not in favor of this article. It's just more or less a slush fund. If you can't do better with your budget, be more specific. So I'm not in favor of it.
Thank you, Pat. Jason, please.
I did not support this article this year. Slush fund is hardly the term because there are very specific controls through DRA and how you can use the fund, and you have to appeal, you have to exhaust your entire operating budget and then appeal to DRA for use of shooting the lock off this checkbook. And I haven't seen these commissioners do that. So I didn't support it this year, even though it was created in years past. And it's regulated. It's 1% of your previous year's operating, but that's the limit. That's what you're allowed to do. But we had not seen performance I had not seen performance from our commissioners to be willing to go and have the need. And everybody's, we've talked years past, well, what would you use it for? Well, the hypothetical is, well, what if the boiler blows? Well, I guess what the boiler blew, one of the, and they didn't use it for that either. So, me personally did not see that the commissioners were actively thinking about using this. They were able to pay all our bills within the operating budget, and the chief was very careful to kind of move things around as the year wrapped up and paid the bills and got the job done with what we had approved in the budget.
Thanks, Jason. Joyce, please.
I just have a question. I didn't look at the papers, but usually by this time of year, you have kind of an idea of what the estimate is of any, and they keep changing the accounting term. We used to say unreserved fund balance, but now it's unassigned fund balance. Do you have any idea of what we're going into 2022 with a fund balance that hasn't already been reserved for or assigned for other known expenses that you have?
Mike, please.
Just curious.
After everything's passed as proposed in the warrant, we will have $271,159 in the unassigned fund balance.
Okay, and does that meet the percentage that DRA usually recommends between 5 and I think 15 or 17% you should?
No, what is recommended is 16.67%.
Okay.
And that amount would equal for over $500,000.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
And so we are below it? Way below it. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joyce. Further testimony on Article 12. Oh, sorry.
Absent this contingency fund, there is a process in place where you can petition the DRA and approve additional funds that way. So this isn't a cure-all end-all. It's used for anomalies, if you will. And it's like Jason said, it's been in place, we've had it in place, we've never used it. And not that I'm a big believer in what DRA recommends that we have for fund balance. The more we have going forward as we potentially look at a new building and go for a bond, the better your balance is, it works in your favor with the bond banks.
Thanks, Kevin. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Kevin LaChapelle. I think Kevin just answered my concern about if someone else from the commission or the chief can answer this. I believe GASB says that we have to be over that certain amount, whether it's 15%, because it will affect our bond rating. That's my concern, is if we do enter into a bond agreement and we're not at that 15%, that's gonna affect our rate. I'd hate to put ourselves in that position.
Is there a question?
I asked the question of, can someone confirm that we have to be over the 15%? Otherwise, it affects our bond rating.
That the balance of the bond rate or the unassigned fund balance is one of the factors that they use in determining the interest rate charged to that municipality.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So that answers my concern. I would want it close to that 15% of the future bond rating. So if we're there, then I'm okay with that.
Thank you, Kevin. Further testimony? Article 12, Kevin King.
Kevin K. Tilton. I'm probably the last guy that you'd expect to stand up here and say, yeah, let's do this. But I have some concerns looking at the budget that, given the climate that we're in now with the cost of fuels, I didn't see a very large increase in the budget for gasoline. There was a small increase in the budget for diesel fuel. And I didn't see a very large increase in the budget for heating oil. So, minus those increases in the budget for what we've seen going on in the world today, I don't know where additional funds would come from to fund those line items through the rest of this year. So, if this $29,000 could be used for that, and that is a question, would those funds be available, this $29,404, be able to be used for things like additional fuel costs?
Mike, please.
Point where we would need that, the commissioners would have to approve any expenditure of this fund to defray the cost of unexpected increases such as fuel, propane, and things like that. So it could be used for those expenses.
Thank you, Mike. Further testimony, Article 12. Seeing none, do I need to read that again? No. No, thank you. All right. Those in favor of Article 12 is read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Moderator is not in doubt. The ayes have it. I so declare Article 12 passes. We have already considered Article 13. Article 14, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate $162,603 for the purpose of purchasing fire, rescue, EMS equipment, and ambulance charges, with said funds to be withdrawn from the apparatus and equipment special revenue fund established under RSA 31:95-C, adopted March 7, 2005. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is recommended by the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion? So moved by Jason, second by Jerry. Can somebody speak to the article, please? Yes, Paul.
Okay, these funds, it is just what it is. Supply the EMS equipment, any equipment used for EMS and stuff.
Thank you, Paul. Further testimony, Article 14. Seeing none, those in favor of Article 14 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare that Article 14 passes. Article 15. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $53,984 for the purpose of purchasing a new command vehicle, with said funds to be withdrawn from the apparatus and equipment special revenue fund established under RSA 31:95-C, adopted March 7, 2005. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is recommended by the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. Seconded. Moved and seconded. Somebody speak to that? Eric, please. Thank you.
This is for the purchase of a new command vehicle for the Deputy Chief, Car 3. The current Car 3 is in pretty rough shape. Last year it barely passed inspection, state inspection. We had to do a lot of work to the rocker panels and some other areas. When we first presented this, the cost The chief was looking at a specific vehicle, and we went with the vehicle that we currently have because to take the equipment for the command center would save several $1,000s over the cost, where we wouldn't have to repurpose it because the old equipment from the command center would fit into the new vehicle.
Thanks, Eric. I'm going to ask a couple of questions in anticipation of it. What year is the vehicle and how many miles are on it? Do we know that?
It's a 2009 Ford Expedition. About 160,000 miles on it.
Thank you very much. Further testimony on Article 15. Mark, please.
Quick question. I believe last year, maybe the year before, we just bought a new command vehicle 1, correct? How many calls has that vehicle been on? About.
Mike, please.
So I did that research today for someone who else asked a question. I can only answer for the last 4 months because we have a new records management system that we implemented. And when we imported all the data from the old records management system with the new records management system, vehicle usage was not included in that data transfer. It didn't take for some reason or another. So in the last 4 months, it went on 49 calls.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Further testimony on Article 15. Kevin, please.
I don't support the purchase of a new command vehicle. I don't think it's necessary for a small department to have 2 fully equipped command vehicles. While I acknowledge that certain people in the department need vehicles to do their jobs, those vehicles don't necessarily need to be fully equipped command vehicles. The question comes up, how often are they actually used as command vehicles? As was alluded to earlier, the only statistic we have due to loss of data and the change of software shows that 7% of the time they were used as command vehicles. That leaves 93% of the time they were doing or being used in other non-command roles. Very possibly nothing more than transportation. I think an opportunity was missed when the request was made to look at other types of vehicles that lost their place. I think an opportunity was missed when this request was made to look into other vehicles that would perform the function rather than just go for another fully equipped command vehicle. Currently, we have 2 command vehicles which are in the possession of the chief and deputy chief. They each take those vehicles home. The chief lives in Tilton, the deputy lives in Guilford. Both the chief and the deputy typically work Monday through Friday, which means that every overnight and every weekend, one of those command vehicles is 25 minutes away. So, just for the record, it's not the money. I wish I could buy a Ford Expedition for 53 grand. If I could, I'd buy multiple. They just cost more than that. It's more of the principle, the actual use, and I believe we should vote this down, put it back in the laps of the commissioners to do some due diligence and find vehicles that will do the purpose without having all that money tied up in a command vehicle.
Thanks, Kevin. Further testimony on Article 15.
Kevin K. Tilton. So let me answer my question, what is the command vehicle used for? What kind of calls does the command vehicle required for?
So the command vehicle goes on calls that it's required. And the answer to that is it could be a car accident, it could be a medical emergency, it could be a fire, it could be a hazmat incident, it could be almost anything you can think of that requires command and presence at the scene. There are some incidents that do not require a chief present. Minor medical emergency, a minor somebody's got smoke in the backyard type of thing where it turns out to be a campfire or something like that, you don't need a command presence. But when you get 2 or more vehicles on scene, you generally need some type of command presence to oversee the operation of the incident.
Thanks, Mike. But why do we need 2?
So, we need 2 because we have 2 chief officers that are qualified to do the command systems, and we're not always available. Usually one of us, we make sure one of us is always available to perform the command functions. Neither one of us are on vacation at the same time. If the deputy's going away for a weekend, I make sure I'm staying home. If I'm going away, I make sure I get around so that one of them is always available. It'd be highly unlikely that one person could handle every emergency incident in the fire district that requires a command presence. That's why we have 2. If you look around to other communities around us, they all have 2 or more themselves for comparable fire departments. I believe Franklin has 3, Guilford has 2, Laconia's got 4, Belmont has 2. I think they're replacing one. I think they just voted to replace one at a cost of $70-something thousand. What we're doing with this $53,000 is reusing a lot of equipment from the old one so that the cost is less than $73,000. I did look at other vehicles, specifically police interceptor type. On the surface, it looked like it would be cheaper, but then when you have to buy new equipment that doesn't transfer from the old car into the new police interceptor, it ends up costing, a new police interceptor would have cost $57,727, which is certainly more than what we're requesting in this warrant article. So I did look at the different options, and this is the most efficient way for us to go.
Thanks, Mike. I recall when we bought Car 1, Chief, and I believe at the time, I may be mistaken, but I think at the time, your record showed that Car 1 had responded to 3 incidences. What year is Car 1 and how many miles were on it? Okay, it was in 2009. No, Car 1. Oh, I'm sorry. The one that the chief drives. Yeah, Mike, please.
Car 1 is a 2019. And it's got 32,000 miles on a Car 1.
It's an awful lot of miles for a car a command vehicle that's going to stay within Tilton and Northfield. I think that car gets used for a lot of out-of-town trips, am I correct? Mike?
So I did, answering someone else's question today, I did that research as well. And out of all the time available to me to working time and things like that, about 1% of my time is spent on meetings outside of the fire district, or on fire district business outside of the fire district.
Lastly, I agree with Mr. Walgren that we only need 1 command vehicle. It could be stationed at the station for use by whoever's available to take the command at the scene. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Further testimony, Article 15. Seeing none. Those in favor of Article 15 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay? Nay. Moderator is not in doubt. Article 15 passes, I so declare. Article 16. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the Budget Committee recommended sum of $2,817,902 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is recommended by the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Pat, seconded by Jerry Davis. Thanks. So we speak to the article. John, please.
All right, so come to this every year. I want to say that this year was unusual because the starting amount that the chief puts before, then the commissioners go into it, and then the budget committee. So the chief's initial was $2,861,316. The commissioners, after going over it, brought it down to $2,817,520 for $43,796 difference. The budget committee, when they came up with a number, they came up with $2,817,902. So their difference from the chief's original starting was $43,414. Essentially, the difference between the ending balance between the commissioners and the budget committee was $382. We really looked at this budget, we really asked questions and followed through on it, and it wasn't a lot to rip out of it and things like that. It was a very solid, thoughtful process put forward, and I just wanted to put that out there that in the past you've heard arguments between the two sides and all that. That's how much of a difference there was between the commissioners and the budget committee, $382.
Thanks, John. Testimony, Article 16. Jason, please.
I wouldn't call it easy, and I wouldn't call it close. I would say that there was a lot of arguing that went on at our weekly meetings, and if we could have put each line item as to what the vote was between the committee, we had a lot of divided opinions. Some things we went less on, and I think our net gain was we agreed to go along on some internet capability and a different level of data service that would be a little more forward-thinking and more reliable and a little more solid. So I think that was one thing that we, as a group, invested in, that I happen to agree with as a conservative, but I would say we really did try to scour it, and we were divided on many things, from the small dollar to the expensive things, but all said and done, it's the number in front of you.
Thanks, Jason. For the testimony, Article 16. Seeing none. Those in favor of Article 16 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare that Article 16 passes.
Just one quick question. So what was the total of all those warrant articles that raised taxes?
Anybody respond to that? We're asking, the question was, what was the
Trying
total?
to do the math out.
Yeah. It's just referring to the ones that don't, that raise taxes.
Don't raise taxes.
I'm sorry, you do raise taxes.
That will raise.
That will raise taxes. Anybody answer the question?
I just want to know what to kind of compare with. That's right, I can add it.
Okay. Thank you, Joyce. Article 17, to transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting. Before we do too much here, I just want to say thanks very, very much to the commissioners again this year, the budget committee, my assistant moderators, Paul and Tim, and most importantly to our firefighters. Paul.
I'd like to single out the budget committee. We're all volunteers. Terrible time of year to be doing it, around Thanksgiving, around Christmas. Thank you all very much for your efforts in providing us with the best service at the lowest cost. Thank you all very much.
So, it's just a point of interest, and I think it's, I don't know if ironic is the word or not, that we were going through the budget, we spent more time on $350 in fuel for a riding lawnmower than we spent here approving the whole budget. This would also normally be the time where we would, and we've seen some already, thank people for what they do. I don't recall, oh, I'm wrong. I don't recall anyone thanking Mr. Finnemore for being among the best damn moderators in this state.
Kevin, please.
Kevin K. Tilton, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider Article 15.
Good be done. Is there a second to that? All right, seconded by Kevin, so. All right, there is a motion, and it has been seconded to reconsider Article 15. Anybody want to speak to the motion? Don't have to. All right. Further testimony regarding reconsideration of Article 15. Seeing none. Okay, those in favor of reconsidering Article 15, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay?
Nay.
I'm going to call for a vote on that, please. I apologize, but there's just not that many people left. We gotta count these. All right, so the motion is to reconsider Article 15. We haven't gotten to that point yet. This is just the motion to do so. Those in favor of reconsidering Article 15, please hold up your cards now.
You missed the sneak attack? Yeah. No sneak attack. No, go home.
All right, those opposed to reconsidering Article 15, please hold up your cards now. I've been thrown out of that places. Thanks. All right, so the vote is 7 in favor of reconsideration and 19 opposed. So motion to reconsider Article 15 fails. We are back at Article 17 to transact any other business that may legally come before you. Eric, please.
You would just move to protect the vote that we just had?
I think what you want to do is, I don't think you have to, you don't have to protect that vote. If you want to make a motion to protect one of the votes, like on Article 15.
I'll make a motion to protect the vote on Article 15.
Is there a second? Seconded by, sorry?
Jennifer Tutek.
Thank you. Discussion on that motion? Those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 15, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay? Nay. The ayes have it. I so declare it. Vote on Article 15 restricted. Reconsideration is restricted under RSA 40.10. Further business under Article 17. I shall accept this motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Seconded by Catherine. But is there any discussion on the motion? No. Those in favor of adjourning, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you.
I had to find another nice